Hello, everybody. I'm Mary DeNiro. Pleased to welcome you to our town hall today. I'm coming to you live from Charleston, South Carolina, where ACUHO is hosting their regional conference. Today, Gay and I are going to share a bit about the strategic plan and specifically how we got to the plan, because really we're just starting to implement it now. A couple of things. We encourage you to use the chat. We encourage you to ask questions, and we certainly will have time at the end of the presentation for real questions, meaning you can unmute yourself and you can ask questions away. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the 2024 ACUHO-I President, Gay Perez. Gay?
Ooh. Thank you, Mary. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And a big shout out to ACUHO and all the folks who are at ACUHO. I miss ACUHO, but my team is representing and I am taking care of a lot of stuff back here at the University of Virginia. So without further ado, we are going to talk a little bit about the strategic planning, and we're breaking it into 3 different sessions. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process and the timeline, and then Mary is going to break down some of the data that we collected. And finally, we're going to talk about how that data and all the efforts informed our strategic plan that was approved in November. So without further ado, we're going to go into the high-level strategic planning process. The strategic planning was an iterative process that involved volunteer stakeholder feedback at key moments across an 11-month period. This timeline right here provides a high-level overview of the activity over the course of the year, culminating with the executive board approval in November of 2023. The product of these efforts, the current strategic plan, began on January 1st, 2024, and will conclude on December 31st, 2026. So the first key moment was our qualitative research. During this phase, our contracted research firm, Association Laboratories, sent out the qualitative instrument from January 10th through the 20th. This instrument focused on identifying stakeholder and leaders' opinions and ideas on the environment, potential goals and opportunities, practical strategies for consolidation or consideration by the association. These findings inform the next step in the research process, building out the quantitative survey. You can see here the open-ended questionnaires went to one more. There you go. The executive board, the foundation board, staff, committee chairs, and industry experts. The facilitated strategy session with the 2023 executive board. Our facilitator, Lowell Applebaum, joined the board in November, New Orleans, both for the board meeting and the State of the Profession Symposium in January. During this time with the board, he organized the discussion around gaining insights for the strategic planning process at the board level. Mainly, this time was used to discuss what governance excellence would look like for the association in this next time period, three-year time period. In other words, what did the executive board need to achieve on behalf of the field to be successful?
So I'd like to go through the quantitative research that we did with members and non-members. I think that you'll find that this information, there's not a lot of surprises, especially when we think about the research that we did in 2020 for the last strategic plan. But I will say that, ACUHO-I strives to be a data-driven organization, meaning that we make programmatic, strategic, and all sorts of other decisions based on the data we have and data analysis and the interpretation of data. So as we go through this, I think many of you will be surprised as we look at how senior leaders or institutions responded to the information as opposed to professionals. You will see that we have great alignment. This survey was completed or started between February and March 2023. It was conducted by Association Laboratories, an organization that works around the globe with associations to better understand what members need and want. The tool, and I hope many of you completed the survey, focused on the broader insights around the factors identified as having significant impact on the field over the next 3 years. And that is how long this plan is good for. It starts in 2024 and it goes through 2026. In addition, the goals that are priorities for individuals and institutions. And then how important are the strategic roles that ACUHO-I can play and how important they are over the next 3 years to your, as professionals, and our institution's success. These pieces include the factors, the goals, the strategic roles were identified during the qualitative period and then tested during the quantitative period. And so, as Gay said, in addition to the number crunching that I'm going to share with you now, we also had lots of conversations with people throughout the year of planning in 2023, starting at Future of the Profession, going through Campus Home Live, and then through the October content series, as well as getting feedback from people at our various institutes and webinars. So the environmental scan, what are the challenges and issues that are impacting the campus housing profession and residence life professionals over the next 3 years? And here are some of the things that we found. So, of the 45 factors that we tested, it is probably no surprise to anybody that mental health is the factor most identified as having a significant impact on campus housing and residence life. And this is unchanged from 2020. You can go through the list and you can see the dark line is what we said in 2020 that was major factors. And now the lighter line is what is important in 2023. So if we think about a lot happened between 2020 and 2023, and there were some things that dropped off the list and some things that were added to the top 10 list. So on this next slide, here are the things that dropped off that in 2020, folks said is really important. So on the top 10 were need for new and updated policies, adapting facilities to be more inclusive, and declining student enrollment and occupancy. So those dropped off the top 10 list. In 2023, we heard insufficient compensation for our professionals, evolving student expectations, and recruitment of new professionals into the residence life and campus housing roles. And you can see that in some cases, the delta is very significant. So if we move on to the next slide, we're going to take a look at the top 3 significant factors, right? But now we're going to look at it from a very different perspective. We're going to slice this, not to look at it year over year, but now we're going to look at it based on individuals. How did individuals respond? But then also, how did those senior leaders in campus housing, those people who represented the university, who represent the institution, what are they saying are the most important factors? And again, the 3 most important factors: mental health, the cost of college and university attendance, and deferred maintenance. Yet institutional respondents. So those are the senior leaders. Their issues are around deferred maintenance, recruitment of new professionals, and limited capital for maintenance as the significant factors. So let's break this down again, both on the individual and institutional respondents. We can see that both groups agree that mental health is and retention of professionals in residence life are the roles and the most critical environmental factors facing us in the next 3 years. So let's think about our goals a little bit. What are institutions' goals and what are the professionals' goals? And if we look at that, there were 35 factors or goals that we tested. And the most selected amongst all respondents is to understand the change in student needs at 69%. Interestingly enough, even though we had a pandemic, this was also the top goal in 2020. So you can go through and you can see how things changed. 2020 is the dark blue, 2023 is the light blue. You can see where there's significant deltas. Provide safe and inclusive environments. That was really important. This year, still important. 60% said it was important, yet the change is by about 10%. So what I'd like to share now is a way to think about what do institutions have in common with professionals and vice versa, and then what are those goals that are unique to the institution or the senior leaders versus those that are unique to the individual respondents. So the highlighted items are those that are unique, meaning it came up in the top 10 for the institutions, but it did not come up in the top 10 for the professionals. So when we look at what goals are unique to the institution or senior leaders, improving mental health, effectively manage facilities, improve collaborations amongst departments, supporting underrepresented students like first gen, and building new facilities. The ones that are unique on the individual side are really around skills. Improve my strategic planning skills, improve my management supervision skills, my leadership skills, identifying the next step or career path in my career. So those are what are unique. All the other ones that are grayed out are what they had in common. And so I think we should feel pretty good that there's so much that is in common, but to also recognize that there are some areas of differences when we think about where people sit and how they're viewing this. So let's talk about which potential ACUHO-I strategic roles are most important to our stakeholders. So there are 6 potential strategic roles, both at the institution and the respondent level, and we asked them to rank what was critically important or very important. And so when we look at this, you can see education and resources, and that's really around our professional development and training and the dissemination and the communication of existing knowledge. And then we look at business operations support, and that's really around education and resources on things like HR, marketing, fiscal controls, summer conferences, occupancy and assignments, etc. The third one, advocacy. And advocacy, you can see the individuals really want us to advocate on their behalf. And that's really around this notion of influential leadership. How do we make sure that when the profession is doing really good things, we're sharing the news with stakeholders, and when things are becoming under attack, that we are there to support our professionals. Research and knowledge development revolves around the creation and the discovery of new knowledge. When we think about research and knowledge development, we think about things like future of the profession and all the work that has been done there. And then high value offerings, that's really around discounts on key services, the portfolio of products and offerings that we have at different price points, depending on if it's an individual, a team pass, etc. So when we think about these top strategies and we think about what's important for institutional respondents and what's important for individual responses, I think the thing here that is so interesting is how aligned they are. And if we look at the top two categories, education and resources, as well as business operations, you can see the most important, as ranked by both professionals and the institution, is benchmarking and residence life operations and compensation data. This directly ties into the campus housing index, and both groups came in at 68%. Other strategies are, the function focused programs that we do, and our conferences. So completely aligned on that part. When we look at business operations support, again, the campus housing index is the top rated by both groups, as is the annual conference. And then we have a difference. For the institutions, the Senior Housing Officer Institute was rated very high. But for individuals, they're saying external reviews of either their unit or of their department was the third highest rated. As we go into advocacy, we talked a little bit about what advocacy was just a moment ago, but here are some ways that we can really demonstrate that. And both groups wholeheartedly agree that collaboration with other higher education associations is very important. To have government relations representation, and this is primarily in the US because that's where our advocacy really is focused. When we look at institutions, they want to make sure that our voice is being heard during regulatory comment periods when things are happening, perhaps around FLSA or other things. On the individual side, they want acknowledgement of significant global issues. And then we go to community and collaboration. Again, great alignment by both groups. They both value the peer-to-peer knowledge sharing. Institutional, the senior leaders, especially at 75%, and individuals at 67%. And I think that's something that ACUHO-I does particularly well, is to find places and spaces where people can get together to share knowledge, to think about things differently. And they do that through a variety of ways, through webinars, et cetera, but they also do it through committees, networks, task force, and volunteering. If we look at research and knowledge development, what folks are looking for is, what's the next thing? What is the next thing that is going to impact my program? What's the next thing that's going to impact me? What's the next thing that I should be doing to prepare my staff, to prepare for the next wave of students? So these emerging practices and emerging trends. In addition, when we look at the institutions, they're interested in the assessment of student level outcomes of living on campus. Again, that data that we heard so much about earlier, as well as the CHI again. On the individual side, they're interested certainly in the emerging practices as well, and the benchmarking. And then finally, it's no surprise that the cost of things are going up for everybody, and our institutions are interested in member registration rates for in-person events, but they're also interested in free webinars that we're doing and discount programs that maybe we can offer for our services, like the Campus Housing Index, or team passes, other things that we offer to make our programs a little bit more affordable. Okay, I think this goes over to you.
Yeah, I think so. Hold on one second. Here we go. We also asked alternative assessments. We were very interested in hearing from you all and our members to talk about which organizations provide the resources and services that best meet the campus housing professional. We recognize that there's a lot of different opportunities out there, and we were very curious to see where our members are going to seek these resources and services. So you can see on the left-hand side is the issue areas. And then on the right-hand side is just some of the resource providers. And so we asked about industry research and data. Where are they going for professional development and business operations and administration and management, residence life, networking and connections, finding job opportunities, and so on and so forth. And so what we found on the next slide, that ACUHO-I was the go-to source for 10 out of the 13, but strongest performance was in advocacy, industry research, and professional development for residence life. ACUHO-I was not the go-to for finding job, or not the only go-to source for finding job opportunities, identifying and recruiting talent, and identifying new technologies to improve my work. So with all this data that we had, we thought to ourselves, what is the best way in which to have further discussions, not just qualitative, quantitative, that's informed. We've collected all of this data. And so we decided that strategic planning retreat with specific stakeholders. So finally, our facilitator, Lowell, led a strategic planning retreat with the strategic planning team on April 2023 in Washington, D.C. The group was comprised of select stakeholders, including past and sitting board members, committee chairs, and industry experts. During this time, the group engaged in activity and discussion around the vision and mission of the organization, areas in need of strategic focus, and goal setting. After the process was concluded, a draft of the plan was formulated using all the data collected. It was reviewed by staff with an eye on the operationalizing of the identified goals, and submitted to the board for their review in June in Portland. Between June and November, the plan was reviewed and edited based on feedback and resubmitted for final approval in November of 2023.
So, how did this work turn into the new strategic plan? Well, let's start with the vision statement. And, we didn't make too many changes to our vision statement, which is good, because it means that we're on the right course. It means that we're doing, I think, the one we had of being the preeminent resource and champion for the global housing profession, that really is our vision. And I think that in many ways we're fulfilling that now. But we also then looked at our mission statement. And that is that we will cultivate a diverse, inclusive, and equitable profession that delivers transformative residential student experiences. And we'll do so through extensive knowledge resources, innovative operational models, courageous advocacy, and resolute community connections. So from the work we did, we came up with areas of focus that just almost naturally emerged, and they are, we heard about the quantitative research came back and said that we need to provide professional development and learning opportunities for obviously our professionals at all levels, no matter where they are. And that it's not just using the same programs we had, but we need to really be thinking about this in a future focused way. When the survey was conducted, we were all still thinking pre-pandemic. But I think that the takeaway for me is certainly we've emerged from the pandemic, but we need to be looking at things not as how things are today, but always what do we think is going to happen in the future, and how do we prepare our members for that? Serving campus professionals, through a whole variety of platforms. We have here channels and modular formats, but really we have to meet people where they are. In some cases, doing things in person works, and webinars that we're all so familiar with, and virtual roundtables. But we need to think about other things, podcasts, self-paced learning, and more. I think that our professionals are busier than ever. The time that they want to be away from their family and campus may not be as long. And so how do we think about what we're doing and making sure that we're meeting people where they are? The other things that came out of this were deliver the comprehensive Future of the Profession initiative recommendations. People are really interested in all 8 imperatives, but the ones that we get the most feedback on are around DEI, health and well-being, and of course, workforce sustainability. We heard this in the qualitative research, this idea of connecting with other higher ed associations. But I think it goes deeper than that. It's not just peer associations, it's also with our regions. It's with external organizations. It's thinking about how do we connect campuses together, and perhaps other organizations that engage and promote the work that we're all doing on a daily basis. And then, amplifying this notion of the importance of campus housing. I think in the past we have done a decent job of talking to each other. What we heard from all of you is we need to start engaging chancellors, presidents, provosts, policymakers, and other influential stakeholders in our work. And sometimes those are people who are seen, we know who they are because they're category folks. But other times, they're folks, they're stakeholders who really have an awful lot of influence on our programs, et cetera, but they may not be as prominent. So, you all think about parents a lot. That's not something that the association has thought about. We think about it, but not in the same way that you do. And then finally, this notion of providing volunteer opportunities that enhance our members' experience, their skill set, and the association goals. Certainly during the pandemic, we heard from many of our volunteers that said, it was because of my volunteer opportunities at ACUHO-I that I kept my sanity some days. It was being able to connect with other people and think about really big or deep problems on future of the profession. And so we know that people want more of those, but they want them in different ways also. The idea of a 2 or 3 year commitment may be too long now. People are more interested in, coming in for a 6-month, 9-month period, doing really good work, and then stepping back and then coming back in again. So with that, we have our survey results. We've had lots of conversations. We think about this new strategic plan that in some ways can feel very familiar, yet it's really very different in the nuances, because now everything is driven by the future of the profession imperatives. So when we think about these 4 pillars that we've had for about the last 8 years, we now are looking at them through the lens of the future of the profession. And, while it may feel comfortable, and I said that there are nuances that are in here, I want to make sure that I call out that the strategic emphasis of what we'll be doing across the next 3 years is really around strategic collaboration, volunteer engagement, and what are the products and services that our members need now and for the next 3 years. But more importantly, how do we take those important programs that have been part of our portfolio and revamp them? Revamp them for today's learners. Revamp them with new and more contemporary ways of adult learning. Revamp them with the trends that we are seeing, that all of you are seeing. Sure, some of the fundamentals stay the same, but we know that this is a rapidly changing, ever-changing field. And the next generation of leaders and, quite frankly, campus housing professionals need to really understand the comprehensiveness of all of that. And then something new that we have added, this is something that I've always had on the internal documents that the staff works on. But, I think it's important to bring it to our volunteers that we are always looking for ways to be more operationally effective and with efficiency. That means more now than ever. As inflation and higher rates are happening, we all have to be able to work smarter. We need to be able to continue to think about what we're doing in ways that are creating more efficiencies, sharing risks with others, as opposed to taking it all on ourselves. So with that, Holly, if you want to take down the slideshow, I promised you that we would have time for questions. A couple things before we start that. I wanted to let you know that when we send out the deck, we have a lot more research, and we're going to include that research in the deck so that you can have the time to go through and read it and ask questions, etc. So I wanted to let you know that this session is being recorded, and so folks will have the opportunity to watch it. But this is just one of the first things that we're doing to roll out the strategic plan. It started with our volunteer summits, which are all of our committee members, et cetera, in January. We talked about some of it at State of the Profession for those of you who were there. We have a town hall, and we will continue to have other moments where our members can interact with the strategic plan and with us to let us know what's working, what's not working, what their thoughts are. As I mentioned at the top of this meeting, this plan kicked off in January, which in some ways feels like it was 4 months ago, and in some ways it feels like it was just last week. So we're now developing many of the strategies and plans to move this plan forward. So with that, I will open it up. And Gay, if there's anything else that you would like to say. Someone asked if the slide deck will be available, and the answer is yes. And I'm looking in the chat. We have a direct message. We have folks who asked, can we speak to who can attend the State of the Profession, and how are folks invited to Yes, yes, we can. Gage, you want to take that, or would you like me to?
I can start us out. I mean, the state of the profession was, an idea that was started maybe what, 5 years ago, right before
9 years ago.
9 years ago. Wow. And it was just an opportunity to get some of the senior leaders of institutions together, um, more because it was a response to the need that we see about networking and connections and having a space for us to really delve into, because a lot of times we're very much focused on our day to day and what's going on in our home institution. And this was an opportunity to get some folks together to do an environmental kind of scan of what's going on across the country and across the globe, and being able to take a moment to just look to be a little bit more forward thinking. And so that was how the state of the profession started. And I'll kick it back to Mary.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I mean, so I think the question is, how do I get on the list, or who's on the list, or however it might be. So, it starts with the senior housing officers and their VPs. That's who's invited. At times, we try to invite senior members from institutions. If we're in when we're in a location, we also sometimes will go down into deeper levels because we're right there. But mostly it's our senior folks, and we encourage them to bring their bosses to hear what's going on. It's a moment in time to not really think about how to do campus housing, but to think about what are these issues that are happening in society, happening across the academy. And it's really designed for the most senior folks. Of course, we have our board members who also attend, many of our trustees, but this is a program really grounded and specifically for the most senior people in the profession. I see another question here from Dominique, a Leadership Academy alumnus. Let's see, I think I just missed you. Okay. Connected to this conversation about SOP, have you ever considered a similar conversation for mid-level leadership, considering we have recognized the amount of work that happens at that level? Absolutely. We do have the mid-level leadership institution or institute. And that particular institute is different than the other institutes. So when we think about NHTI, when we think about Stars College, those institutes you go through once, you graduate, and then you move on to something else. Mid-level, though, is really designed for those folks who are in that category, that career trajectory, to be able to gather with their peers. And so that institute really should not be thought of as a one and done. Maybe we need to change it. Maybe we need to rebrand it. But we really hope that that's the place that mid-level folks will come and have conversations that they're all having across their level, and to be thinking about the issues that they're facing on their campuses and that the academy is facing in general. Let's see. Okay, we have a question from Gavin Rourke. He said, I've seen some information about the new program review collaborative and wanted to know if this collaboration takes place of the Professional Standards Institute, or how you feel this initiative fits into the strategic plan.
Sure, Gavin, great question. This was actually a response to strategic collaborations. So that's how it fits into our strategic plan. It was an opportunity that we were working with NASPA, and they had invited ACUHO-I to hopefully leverage some of the expertise of student housing in their review process, because they often are the entity that are approached by senior level chancellors and things like that. And sometimes they want a review of housing programs. So I don't think it was intended to take the place of Professional Standards Institute, but it does give an opportunity for folks in our profession to apply to be a reviewer. And then ACUHO-I gets an opportunity to be the entity or the association that supports some of the external reviews that NASPA is commissioning. Mary, did you want to add anything else?
Well, I would say that, you know, over the years, I've gotten calls from some of you who are on this webinar saying, I want to do a review. Who should I get as reviewers? And, you know, we had a policy, we did not recommend necessarily anybody, because that just didn't seem like the right thing to do. And at times I would get calls from VPs who would say, Mary, I want to do a review. Who do you recommend? And I say, well, we don't really recommend, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, when this opportunity came up, and it's not just ACUHO-I, so we have formed a new collaboration, a new entity, and this is with ACUI, so our friends from the unions. This is with NERSA, our friends from Rec Sports, NASPA, and ACUHO-I. And I think that, you know, there will be people who will always do reviews, individuals, et cetera. This is a different pathway for some of them to do it, but it's also a pathway to think about, how do we make sure some of the things like our housing competencies, to make sure that the future of the profession lens and other things that we know are important are being incorporated into these reviews. You know, PSI was meant to train professionals to do assessments really in their own departments. And then it morphed into these external reviews to create a pipeline of reviewers, but the association really did nothing more than train people. This is a program, as I said, a collaborative of with a more formal construct based on our standards and other things.
Okay, I'm just trying to read these.
Yeah, go ahead.
I see Andy has said, I'm interested in hearing more about possible ways that others can engage and get involved with ACUHO-I on a micro level. Not the 2 to 3 year commitment. And Andy, I have to say that has been a discussion about the executive board, as well as the foundation board, that we recognize that there are lots of different pathways to get involved, and there's a lot of different levels. And back in 2015, when I was part of the executive board, we talked a lot about levels of engagement. And as we continue to evolve as a professional, we have always had that at the forefront. And that's one of the strategic emphases of volunteer management. So I think you're going to see a lot of hopefully other opportunities to volunteer and get involved with the association that will not involve like a 2 to 3 year commitment, because we recognize that people come into the association at different points in their career, and they might go back. And so we want to make sure that we can provide meaningful volunteer engagements.
Yeah, I think some of the most recent examples around the micro volunteering has been with the future of the profession. At each phase, it's been anywhere from 3 to 4 months, 3 to 6 months. And we certainly had many volunteers who started in the first phase and have continued all the way through. But we've had others who have jumped in and jumped out. and they come in, they lend their expertise, they lend their wisdom, they help us think through really big, knotty issues. And then they step away for a while and then they come back in. I think the same thing can be said for many of our committees. I think we're doing a better job of not only having the core committees, but then going out and reaching out to folks who are subject matter experts to bring more insights into those committees. And again, the time period is just a shorter time period, but no less important. And the work is really profound that these groups are doing.
And I would draw everyone's attention to Holly's input in the chat room. She has also identified several other opportunities that folks have been involved in, work groups, task force, and so on.
Mm-hmm. I saw Dima. I saw a comment from you. What efforts are being made to involve members from outside the U.S. in strategically important association projects? Certainly, Future of the Profession engaged folks from outside of the U.S. As we think about some of the programs that we're doing, we are always looking for those who are from outside of the U.S. I can tell you that faculty for our global institutes, the Global Housing Training Institutes, while we still have many times 2 or 3 people from the U.S., we regularly now are having folks from outside of the U.S., outside of North America, who are serving as faculty and who are serving as leaders of those programs. The GIN network does a great job of keeping people involved, and we test many of the things that we're doing with that group of people to see where's there a good fit, what needs to be changed, and how we might be able to adapt what we're doing.
Any other questions? Oh, you're welcome, Dima. Well, Mary, do you want to wrap us up?
Well, I do. A couple of things to be on the lookout for. We will share, the data, the deck, and more data with the folks who are on this call. I'm looking over, and I think I received a direct message from someone who's saying, so I just want to make sure I answer this. I'm hearing rumors that the building, because it's less occupied on a day-to-day basis, is a discussion topic, selling. And I will share that in 2022, the board said, let's examine or go on, let's see if we can find another tenant for the building. So for those of you who are intimately involved in the building, we have a tenant on the 3rd floor, and we thought that we might be able to find some folks to lease. We went through a whole process, a whole year of looking for different folks who might be interested in leasing. And right now, the Columbus commercial market is really oversaturated with commercial real estate. So, we don't have the staff coming in. We do have a distributed work staff. Now we have people who are working from all over the country. I go into the office on a regular basis. We bring people in, for some team meetings and for staff retreats, et cetera. But it is an asset that we are looking at to say, what's the best use of it? The commercial real estate market is still incredibly depressed. And so I don't think, based on talking to realtors and others, that you'll see us putting the building on the market in the next 3 to 4 months. But, we keep testing to see, what will the market bear, and is it at the right price? And how do we use this asset so that it is, producing results for us? So with that, I will wrap up and just say, we continue to evolve and morph our programs. We look forward to seeing folks at Campus Home Live in Milwaukee. For those of you who haven't been to Milwaukee, I got to tell you, it's a pretty cool city, especially in the summer, So we have a great local arrangements committee who are really trying to highlight the city and all things that are available. Of course, we'll start with our international study tour, and I see, folks from the University of Wisconsin, Marquette University, and a few others who are on that study tour. And then we go into our conference, so we hope to see you there. There will be more opportunities to engage with the strategic plan. Just take a look in connections and social media. And I really appreciate everybody taking their time to listen to what we have to say. And equally so, I really encourage you to send us feedback. Send us feedback on the plan, on the data. This only works because we have such engaged and involved members. And this is a program, the strategic plan is a program that was put together by our volunteers, led by our executive board. So with that, I thank everybody, and I hope you all have a good rest of the week. And for our international colleagues, have a good night.